and welcome to the session on how R&D teams at Monday are using monday.com to build monday.com. My name is Vitaly Margolin. I'm a senior team lead at Monday, and I lead the software development domain. I'm a certified Scrum Master, and I started coding when I was 13, and it's been quite a while now. So when I first joined Monday, it was the first time I used Monday as a software development tool, and I really enjoyed using it. And I couldn't pinpoint at the start exactly why. And I think that after thinking about it more, two things came out. And one of the things is that it's collaborative and fun. I really enjoyed using it. And you're going to see it later in the demo, how I use it. So before we get into it, let's talk about Scrum. And at Monday, we use Scrum as our development process. Very similar to the regular Scrum you see here on the screen, with a bit of tweaks, and we made it our own. So we have the product backlog, which is owned by the product manager, but in Monday, all the teams owns it. So later on, we're going to talk about the product backlog. I'm really going to get into how we manage our backlog. The next thing we have is a pre-planning meeting. And the idea of a pre-planning meeting is to sit with all of the team and say, what is our goal for the next iteration? What do we want to achieve? What impact do we want to make? And then we select everything that will achieve that goal from the backlog. And even if something is not in the backlog, we're going to create it and add that. From then, we're going to move to the planning, where we're going to estimate everything, see that everyone's capacity is in order. We're going to prioritize, and we're going to create the sprint backlog. Once this is done, we're going to move into the sprint. A regular 2-week sprint for most of the teams in Monday, with some of the teams working 1-week sprints. We're going to have daily scrums in the morning, between 20 minutes and 30 minutes, where we're going to update what we did yesterday, what we're planning to do today, and is there anything stopping us from reaching our daily goals. Then we're going to deploy things to production during the sprint. So once something is ready, it's going to go live. We're not waiting to the end of the sprint to release a big version. And that way, we're making an impact during the iteration and not waiting until the end. Once the sprint is finished, we're going to do a quick summary and a retrospective meeting. And this one is very important because we always want to improve as a team. Now, a little bit about Monday teams. So the teams in Monday are independent. And by independent, I mean that we're highly aligned in the fact that we have the same vision, the same goal, we want to have impact, but every team does it a bit different. So the boards are a bit different, the meetings are a bit different, all the sessions are a bit different. So the daily might be longer or not, the boards might look different, but in the end of the day, our goal is the same. Another interesting fact is that all of the teams at Monday are full stack. I'm putting a few teams aside, which are the mobile team, for example, but most of the teams are full stack, and this allows us to give full ownership of the tasks. So a developer will sit with the product manager, basically from the second we're thinking about an idea, and then with the designer about the design, then he will develop it and deploy it to production, and even after that, he will check the impact, analyze the numbers, and see what impact he did in the task. Cool thing we don't have in Monday actually is a QA team. So we don't have QA in Monday. The developers test their own code and ship it. They're full ownership from start to end. Another thing about the teams is the teams are cross-functional. It's not just developers. We have developers, product, designers, marketing, analysts, sometimes sales. And we work all together to reach that goal, and we use Monday together, and we're going to see in the demo how we do it. So without further ado, let's go into it and see how it works. So welcome to Monday Solution for Software. I'm going to go over most of the things you're seeing here, so don't worry about everything. And this is where we're going to start. So there's a lot of things you're seeing on the screen, but bear with me. We're going to go over most of the things you see here, and you're going to understand everything as we go. So what is the home? The home is the place where you usually want to start. It has links to your most important things, whether it's inside Monday or outside Monday. So you're going to have links here to your iteration board, to your reports, some kind of dashboards. And you can also have useful links to anything related to the team outside of Monday. So your AWS account, your CI process, your GitHub account. So anything that will help you, you can put it there. Another thing you have here is internal updates. Anything related to updates of the team, you can put there. Voice of customer, performance updates, hiring, onboarding tasks for new engineers joining the team. So this is really the place for you to share information and have history of it. Another cool thing we have in Monday is useful links, useful tools. So what you have here is just tools to things that people in your team find useful. Whether it's a cool Chrome extension, whether it's a Mac extension. So you can find it here and you can share with the team. Some of the cool things that people are doing here is they're adding a column with the voting abilities, and people vote for what tools they think are the best, and then you can start with those and give them a try. So this is the home, and if you remember, I went over with you on the Scrum process. So I really want to start from the start of the process, and the start is the backlog. And what you have in the backlog is basically everything that you want to do in the future. And in Monday, we plan a queue ahead. We always plan according to queues. And in order to plan a queue, first we need to define a goal for the queue. So what we do as a team, we usually do an offsite, a whole day of an offsite. And during this offsite, we go over the numbers of last queue. And we see where we need to improve. And this is the place we decide what should be our goals for next queue. And here you can see an example from some goals we had in Q3, Q4. And you can say where we started. So let's say here, accounts user GitHub integration. We started with 17% of the accounts, and we want to reach 25. This is our goal. And here we will fill in, at the end of the queue, what did we reach. That way, we're going to have history. And everyone in the company that wants to understand where we're at can go inside this board. Interesting, cool thing that some of the teams are doing, they're also doing a mid-queue sync and updating where they are in the middle of the queue. So once we've decided on our goals, we can start planning the queue. And planning the queue is done sometimes using the product managers, sometimes it's the product manager and the team lead, sometimes other people are helping out. But this is how it looks like. So I saved us some time. I already prepared a queue in advance. And let's just go over how it looks. So we have the name of the big task we want to achieve. We can also have an owner. So one of the engineers, as I mentioned before, has full ownership of a task end-to-end. So he's the owner. That also allows us to plan the queue much better. The priority, which is a proxy to the impact this will make according to our goals. And then we estimate very roughly how long will it take and when in the queue we will get there. And sometimes we even set dependencies. And we say, OK, maybe we can't finish this before that. For example, we need to design something before we build it. So we might have two separate items here, one for design, one for dev. And this is how it looks like when we go into the Gantt. So in the Gantt, you can see, for example, our designer. And she has a task here. And this task is relevant to something that Nadav is doing a bit later. And if during the planning it will take her longer, we will just push it a bit ahead. And it will push Nadav tasks a little bit to the front. And it's an amazing way to have total visibility and to plan the queue in a great way. Once we have this, some of the teams like to have specs. So maybe a product manager can have like a PRD or anything that explains how or what we should do in this task. And for that, we use Monday docs. So let's have an example here. We can add a doc and go inside. Let's say this is a spec, and we're going to move it to like a title. And inside this spec, we can have all sorts of things. We can have a goal. So let's say we want to do a GitHub integration. So the idea is that we want to allow users to use GitHub without leaving Monday. This could be an example of the goal. We can say, you know what, I need Adida designer to add the design assets here. So I will tag her, she will add a notification, and she could add some of the resources here. And after we'll create some of the tasks, maybe we want to showcase them here. So we can have a board, and we can add the board that we're working on. We'll go over the board later. And then we can filter it, let's say, by GitHub. And then we will see all of the tasks which are relevant to this spec. You can look at it as an epic. And you can also add a lot of cool widgets to see progress and a lot of other things that we didn't even imagine you can do, but are currently possible. So this is the queue planning. Once this is done, the next thing will be to create the backlog. And for that, we're going to go into our sprint management folder and to our team board. So what you see here is everything regarding the sprint itself. So we're going to have here the backlog and all of the sprints. Some teams even create a bugs queue or a cheese group with specific tasks. It's also a possibility, but everything is done in one single board. But to help us focus when we work specifically on the backlog, I created a view. And this view is filtered only for the backlog. And that makes it super easy for us just to focus on that. And we'll go over the backlog now. So what we have here is a few columns that really help us out. So the name of the task will appear on the left. We have the owner of the task, which usually will be decided on later once we move into the sprint, or according to the queue planning. We have the status that can be needs dev or needs design. The priority, some teams use the priority here inside the backlog. I personally prefer just using drag and drop, and whatever on the top of the backlog has the most priority. And we can have epics. And epics is just tags that you can add, and then you can filter on them and see all the tasks which are relevant to that epic. So let's create, for example, anything. So we can have like a GitHub integration, and this one will need design, and we're not using priority, and this is going to be a design, and it's going to be relevant to GitHub. And we're just moving it to the top. Okay? And this is basically how it works, and we create any backlog that we want. Now that we have the backlog ready, we're going to move to the sprint, and we're going to create our first sprint. How are we going to do this? A sprint is basically a group. So we create a new group, and we're going to call it sprint 7, or you can have a cool name for all your sprint, or a cool name generator for your sprint. It's also something that happens in Monday. And you can start dragging basically everything from the backlog. Maybe sometimes you want to add it directly to the sprint, and so on and so on. I'm not going to do this here because it's going to take a long time. So I've prepared the sprint in advance. And we're going to have it here. So it's going to be sprint 2. I'm going to close the groups and move this sprint to the top. OK. So now we have the sprint, and we moved all the relevant items from the backlog to the current sprint. And everything is ready. Once everything is ready, basically, the most important thing is to check capacity. I don't know, maybe Nave has too many tasks. And for that, I'm going to go over to our planning dashboard. Our planning dashboard has a few cool widgets. And the first one shows sprint capacity. And what I see here is that the max capacity is usually 9 days. But this 1 day is mainly preserved for meetings. If anyone has a vacation, or let's say we have a company offsite, we add it as a task to the sprint. And we have here a cool list of things that we won't forget to add them, because we usually do, and then the sprint is not done in time. So I can see that Nave still has a little more time, and Tomer, so I can go back to the sprint, and I can add a few more tasks for them. Another cool thing that we see here is split by priority. So I see that 43% of the tasks are high, which makes sense. What wouldn't make sense is the iteration with 90% of the tasks which are high priority, which means it's not good. So the split should always be somewhere like this. So you should always have some low priority, maybe some best effort, medium, and high. So once this is done, we can start working on the sprint. So we're moving with the graph, we're moving from the backlog to the sprint planning, sprint management. And now we start working and people start updating things. So let's say that Adi start working on something and she will move here and she will say, I started working on that. Once she changed the status, you see here that a date change. And this is due on automation. So we created an automation saying, when something moved to working on it, update this for today. Why do I need it? Because sometimes we just want to remember, when did I start working on that? Was it yesterday? Was it last week? We don't really use that for anything else. And you see here the estimation that we gave for the task. And we have an actual column. And once something is done, let's say this one is done, we want to update if it took longer or not. And the reason we want to do this is because we want to compare at the end of the sprint our actual planning versus our actual estimation, versus our actual what happened in the end. So estimation versus actual is amazing to talk about after in the retrospective. And the idea is that we want to improve. We want to improve how we estimate tasks. And during the sprint, we're doing dailies. And here Monday really comes to help us manage that as well. So we'll move to the sprint dashboard and see how we do it in Monday. So this cool dashboard shows us some of the progress people are doing. So we just started the sprint, we just changed a couple of tasks, and we already see Nave is done with 50%. Vitali hasn't finished everything, and Nadav is working on something and is stuck on something. So during the daily, I might ask Nadav, what are you stuck on? Do you need any help? I also see that we had some unplanned tasks which were added. And this is a huge unplanned task, so I might want to talk about it. Another thing is our cool llama farm. And a llama farm is basically shows us all the tasks that we're currently working on. And we want to basically make all the llamas green so that everything is done. Here is another example of what we saw before. So currently, everything that is done, from everything that is done, we only have one task. And the estimation is 1, but the actual is 1.5. So I know it took longer. The next thing we have is all of the personal sprints. So it's split person by person, developer by developer, and then we go one by one. So Vitali is currently not working on anything. I should really talk with him about that. And here, let's say Nave is working on this task, and this is done. Maybe it's something that he wants to update about. And this is how we move throughout the daily. Very convenient, really helps us start the day well. Okay, another interesting fact is that we don't use Kanban. We do have Kanban, and you can't use it if you want. In Monday, we found that the most convenient way to get our information is through the board. But we do have the Kanban. Once more spoiler is that we are going to invest and make the Kanban much better than it is now for all of the developers that enjoy using Kanban to manage their sprints. Okay, so I really want to talk with you about what I said in the start, and it's about collaboration. And of course, since all the company is using Monday, everyone can see the progress of the task and the progress of the sprint and all of the cool dashboards. But a captain's log is really the place when collaboration kicks in. And when I started using Monday, this was the first thing that I said, wow, this is amazing. How come we didn't use it in the last company? And let me explain what's a captain's log. A captain's log is a place where everyone, every engineer, every designer, every product manager wants something goes live into production, they publish it on this board. And they publish it with a lot of information. So for example, you can have the name of the task that you have been working on, who was the person. Sometimes you have a CX person, which is relevant for this task because once something new goes live, users might have a lot of questions. So he's the person in charge of knowing all the information so that questions won't go to the engineers, not to overwhelm him with questions. Another thing is the release. So a lot of the problems when you release someone, suddenly people don't know, do everyone see this feature? Maybe it's an A/B test in beta for specific customers. So we have a column for that, where we explain, listen, currently it's in beta or only inside Monday, just to check it before we release it to everyone else. We have, if it's a gradual release, maybe just to 30% of the customers, so we will say 30% of the customers. We have the team, which was relevant to building this, and it helps us create all sorts of reports and also understand what team is relevant for that feature if you have any questions and the developer is not available to answer them. Another thing where collaboration really kicks in is the update section. So once someone creates an update, it has a lot of cool information. So he has GIFs and screenshots, and he really explains what the feature was that was released to everyone. And this is a great place to collaborate. So whether you just want to say, wow, that was amazing, or maybe you have a few questions about how it works, maybe you want to have some feedback, maybe something didn't work for you when you tried it. This is the place to collaborate between everyone in the company and that specific task. And for us, it's really amazing. It's a win-win situation for the engineer and for the company. Okay, now that we went over the captain's log and understand, another thing is that we change it to queues. So every queue we have all the releases we did in that queue, and that helps something with the marketing department, for example. So it happens once in a while that the marketing team looks 2 weeks before the time and they said, oh my God, why did the graph change? What was that spike? Did something change on August 1st? So they can always go to the captain's log, look to what changed on August 1st, and see if it was relevant to that spike in their data. So this is really beneficial for everyone. One last thing about the captain's log before I forget is the feedback loop. So once this feature is released, a lot of the CX persons get feedback from customers. And maybe they want to share this feedback to really close the feedback loop. So the developer which started this in the beginning with the product manager, thinking about what they should do, design it, build it, publish it, now gets feedback directly from the customer on that task in the same place. And this is something I didn't encounter in any software development tool I used before, and for me it was mind-blowing. So once everything is done and the sprint is finished, then we want to think for a second, maybe stop, and do a retrospective. So this is the retrospective board. And a retrospective is an amazing time to sit, think, and improve. And different teams do it differently. Some of the teams has 2 different meetings, one for just the R&D team and one for the entire team, including the designers, the product, and maybe even the analyst and the marketing team. And some teams have only 1 meeting with all of the team. So it depends, and everyone do whatever works for them. Some of the teams also creates it as an update and not like you see here. But what we actually notice is great about this solution is that you see everything. Everything is in front of you. So let's go over the board a little bit. What we see here is iteration 2. And in iteration 2, someone says, even before we got to the retrospective, listen, the team lead's availability is something I want to talk about. He's not available for me. So I want to put it up for discussion. And I see that Nave agrees with me, and he voted yes. So probably when we get to the meeting, we'll start with that, because most of the team thinks it's important to talk about it. And I see code reviews is someone added code reviews as skip. So we'll talk about it, but interesting thing is that I can go to the last iteration and see, we didn't talk about code reviews last time. Or maybe we did, and it's something that improved from last iteration. So it's amazing to see all the iterations in one place, and you can scroll from one another to see if something really pops out. Another cool thing is that some people are doing is workload. So in some examples, when you have a lot of iteration, you'll see some words that are very popular. And maybe it will give you an idea of where should you improve, or maybe something that you're doing exactly right. Another interesting fact about this one is action items. So maybe we finished the discussion during the retrospective, and we want to improve it for next iteration. And I want to say as the team lead, listen, Nave, you're responsible for making this happen. This is your action items. And once we'll get to iteration 3, and we'll do the retrospective, and I will notice that it's improved or didn't improve, I will go to Nave and I will ask him, listen, you told me that you will handle that. That was your action item. And it really gives ownership for tasks, and once you give ownership, it usually gets better. So this is about the retrospective. The last thing I want to talk with you about is the DOE. DOE is our version of the on-call, the dev of the week. And it's a huge part of our lives here at Monday. Not just the R&D, but all of the company. The two main use cases for that is for the CX and for the R&D. But we notice that product managers, analysts, everybody wants to take part in this board. And I'm going to walk you through everything you see here. So once you go in, first you see guidelines and responsibilities. And this is for you to understand how to work with this board. But also, let's take an example. You have a CX person, and someone opened a ticket in Zendesk saying, listen, the import from Excel doesn't work. I'm a new CX person to the company. I don't know what team should I go to ask or to open a bug for them. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to search. I'm going to write Excel. I'm going to see that under board score responsibilities, there's the Excel import, Excel export. So I know to go to board score group and open the bug there. So I'm going to go to board score. And once I'm there, I can open a ticket. Let's, for example, open a ticket for the software cluster. So let's say the Excel import doesn't work. OK. So once it's in, you saw that the dev filled out automatically. But how did it know? And this is a very cool thing. So we have our on-call shifts managed in PagerDuty. So there is an integration which says, oh, OK, it's the software cluster. Now it's August. That means that Vitaly is the on-call dev. I'm going to assign him for the task. And once he's assigned, he's going to get a notification saying, someone assigned you to Excel import doesn't work in the dev of the week. And then I will go to that board. I will open this, and I'm going to see the information about this task. This is one example of how it might look like. So someone added a screenshot, maybe a video, whether I have permissions to check his account, if he was able to reproduce the problem, yes or no, maybe some information about the board, and anything that will help you, like the Zendesk ticket link, to solve the problem. And from here, you can actually talk with the CX person. So you have the reporter, and I can reply. And I can say, you know what, Nave, can you ask the user to do something? Maybe he wants you to open the console. Maybe he wants you to change the browser. And after that, this will go back to the CX, and we'll change the status to working on it. And maybe we'll change the priority or something else. But once we will ask the client something, the CX person will change it, waiting for client. And why do we need all of that? We need that for reports. And basically, you're gonna have a column that says how much time this task is waiting for someone to respond and someone to resolve. and the client to respond. And you can create amazing dashboards around everything. And let's go over some of the cool dashboards that we have. So one of the dashboards is pretty easy. It's basically looking across all teams and looking at what's currently open now, and also seeing how much tasks do we have. So currently I'm seeing that Board Score has a lot of tasks during July, and it gets better because now they only have 1 and 3, which is good. So this is this week, and I'm seeing that we have 14 tickets open. I don't know, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, but it's something I really want to see. I can look at it in a different perspective. For example, by status. I can split it by domain across all the tickets. I can focus on a specific team, and I can say, in the CRM, there's a lot of problem with the board structure. So every task, every time that something happens and we finish with fixing it, we're saying what was the service that we fixed. Sometimes we even add the resolution. Was it a code fix? What was it, an A/B test that we need to disable, invalidate cache? Didn't we change anything? Maybe the user changed something. And all of that gives us the ability to really improve our process, to understand where we have problems in the code and where should we improve. So by the end of the queue, when we start planning the queue ahead, in the offsite, we'll probably spend 30 minutes to go over those reports and see in the next queue where should we focus some of the time to improve our stability. And another thing is that we really want to know how much time it takes for a specific team to resolve an issue. And I can see that usually it takes for the CRM on average almost 5 days to resolve an issue, and it's a lot. So I would talk with the team and I will tell them, listen, you need to improve your process, or you need to spend more time next queue on making the system much more reliable. But the board score are in great position. It takes them 1 day to resolve an issue, and it's great, and they should really keep it up. So we went over a lot of the things, and if I had more time, we'll probably go over more, but I just want to give you a few ideas for things you can do. So for example, a customer feedbacks board. For customer feedback, you can have a board that manages all the feedbacks from customer, for example, interviews. So our product managers are doing about between 2 and 3 interviews per week. And they want a summary of that somewhere, so they can share it with the team, whether it's videos, whether it's just text summaries, but we want to have one place. And when we'll go to the queue planning, we're going to probably spend about an hour going over the best of the best, trying to understand where is the pain points of those customers. Security incidents is also something you want to manage. So every now and then we get a security incident, whether it's from some white hacker, or maybe it's some, I don't know, user that finds someone, or maybe it's something we found internally. So for that, we're going to have a security incidents board where we're going to publish everything, and someone from the security team is going to manage it. Another thing, and the last thing, is the production incidents. So production incident, it's not like dev of the day. Production incidents are something big, like the system stopped working, or an API stopped working, and everything crashed. So of course, we're going to have a lot of tickets around that. But we do want to create a production incident around that so that we can improve. We can have an owner. We can also say what were the steps to reproduce everything and how did we solve it. It's also great for auditing, that we'll know exactly what happened then and how we resolve it, and what was the impact of that production incident. How many users were affected? Were there a data loss? Or anything that I'm sure that none of you are experiencing, but just in case, you might want to have that around on your board. So these were just some of the things we use at Monday to build Monday. But before we wrap this up, I really want to go over some key takeaways from this session. So let's review. What did we see in this session? So we saw how to create a roadmap, how to plan queues ahead, how to use the Gantt to do it. We managed the backlog, the priority. We did the sprint planning and the sprints. We did reports, a lot of dashboards that help us do anything regarding the Scrum process, retro meetings, and collaboration. And the most important thing is that we had fun. I know that I did. Thank you.